This morning, as we like to do, we bring in experts to answer your questions and mine. But let's work through this together with Carole Sandy, who's a couple and family therapist and parenting expert. She's in Toronto. Carole, I'm just delighted you've given us some time this morning. Thank you for being our guest.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I am wondering, as you have watched the coverage since the death of George Floyd, what you've heard from people, I don't know, watching the protests, if you immediately went to the place of, we're going to have to explain this and I'm going to have to help people do that. Have you been thinking about what moment this represents?
This is an important time for not only the Black community, but Canada, worldwide. We're speaking up collectively. Enough is enough. And I knew that this opportunity would come where I had to respond, not only to support my families, but just to support all of us. What we saw on TV took our breaths away. And it's important that we spend time recognizing that we want to move forward. We don't want this to happen again. We want to be able to remember that we are human beings that need to be loved and accepted no matter what. And this has caused a lot of confusion for families, for children. And this is so important for us to really start to talk about. It's time. This is the time. And so I'm extremely excited to be here. But I also am saddened that it had to take this for us to have this important conversation.
Indeed. Let's give an opportunity, as you say, and learn. Because I was mentioning, we have an article up online, one of our reporters in Los Angeles, talking to a UBC professor, Carole, who says that children think about race already by the end of the first year of life. I was going to say, when do you have this conversation? But obviously, you need to have it very early. What do you think?
Absolutely. So the thing is, with a lot of visible minority families, children, parents have to have this discussion very early. And that impacts our children. But we know that we don't want the world to prepare them, to interrupt them, to cause tension. We have to be the supporters of them very early on. So parents have this discussion about race, that, you know what? There's going to be people in this world that don't like you. There's going to be people that are not going to like you because of the color of your skin. And that is a very traumatic conversation to have to begin with, but to have it with someone that loves you, that cares for you. These are the moments that are important. So when we have these conversations, it's not new for visible minorities and Black communities. We need to have these conversations in order for us to survive. And it's how we do it. And it's important that we do it very early on. Okay. And that's a sad case, but it is.
So can we talk about the how? Obviously, what you discuss is going to depend on the age and stage of the child. Absolutely. So let's look to the youngest children. How do you, because, I don't know, what are you thinking? 3, is that appropriate, or even younger at that age? So at that early age, how do you approach it and what do you say?
We would, first of all, just be mindful of your language. Be mindful as a parent to appear calm, to be mindful of the ways in which you're having that conversation. So you want to be aware, saying, I know there are some questions you may have, or responding to questions, allowing them to ask questions when they're confused as well. It's important that you recognize that we are in this together. We love you, and that, there are going to be people that are good. There are going to be people that are bad, but you are. And you're the star. You're the person that we can't make people change their minds about you, but know that we love you, and you are going to show up in this world and respect people as best as you can, and that we know that this conversation will continue for their lifetime. This is just the beginning, but the beginning stages is really just setting the foundation. Being calm, allowing them to ask questions, giving them as little or as much information that you believe they need. And also recognizing that these are all opportunities for them to learn. And we don't want the media or anybody else to have control of those conversations before we do.
And then, yes, I was going to ask exactly that. Obviously, this is not a one-off conversation. Those messages of love and concern and keeping that conversation going, something that must continue on. Up until when you get into the adolescent years, when you might be capable, you're seeing a lot of images, have a lot more questions. Is that when you get into some more detail, and how would you suggest speaking to a teen then?
Our young people are so active in the world and they're seeing things. So they're going to ask questions, but I always encourage parents, don't wait. If you have concerns, if you're noticing, something that's important, they may ask questions too. And so we just want to hold space for them. Let them know that they have freedom. What are your thoughts? What do you want to tell your friends? What are some things that you would want to do to change this current situation? So we want to give some power back to these young people and remind them that they are the future and that they have the ability to do anything they put their mind to. So obviously with the young people, they're seeing these images and there is going to be anxiety. There is going to be worry around that and
anger.
Normalizing
anger.
that. Normalize anger, frustration. What does this mean? And we are seeing images of strong, beautiful young people out there making changes right now. So we just want to echo the feelings that they're feeling. And don't be afraid, even as parents, if you are experiencing those feelings and emotions, and letting them know that's how I'm feeling as well too. And the same goes even as with younger children. We want to do the same thing. If you're feeling something, talking about those feelings, being open to address them when they come up, because that's what kids want to know, that what they're feeling is okay. And what they need from us is the support. We're coming alongside them to support them through this process.
Why don't we follow up on what the former president was saying there as he raised the issue that young men and women of color have witnessed too much violence and too much death. And after what we all saw, the video of George Floyd's death under the knee of that police officer, can only imagine the kinds of questions and concerns this must have raised in families looking to have conversations with their children. Particularly, I'm thinking of their sons. How to deal with police interactions. Can you give us some help about what conversation, how do you address that? Maybe this is obviously afforded a moment to do that, but what do you say, and specifically on that issue?
So this conversation with a lot of with Black parents have been had many times. How to put your hands up, how to look, how not to be too shifty if you're stopped by a police officer. So in reality, this is now a conversation that we're having around the world, the talk, as we sometimes, explain it to be. And so it's important that we offer this conversation now and allow us to really be open to this is reality. This is what people have to go through. Racism is hurtful. And so it's important that when we offer these conversations, when parents have these conversations with young people that are Black, that also Black parents are aware, white parents are aware that these are the troubling issues that they have to hold on to. These are the moments that are tough for white parents to talk to their children about, but they need to talk about, that they need to not be afraid or shy away from, that these problems exist and that it's time that we open this up and move and become more curious around what that might feel like and for them.
Carole, I have two questions from two moms, Michelle and Barbara, and their situations are similar, but if you don't mind, I'm going to read them both because obviously they're going through some very difficult thought processes. But Barbara says she's just been listening to you, so our earlier conversation. She's a white mom of an 8-year-old Black daughter. We've been talking about race, but I'm quite overwhelmed right now. What do I tell her about the specifics that led to the current situation? I'm so worried that telling her a man of her skin color was killed by police. Worried that will traumatize her, so hold that thought. And similarly from Michelle, I'm Black, my husband is white, and our 7-year-old daughter has brown color. She has not experienced any issues to date, but we're now having to talk to her that some people don't like others because of the color of their skin. It's been difficult because her frame of reference is her current relationships, but Dad is white, and he loves you, Mom. But then she sees snaps of the video and says, that could be my uncles who the police kill. You see why I wanted to read these in particular, in detail. And then her question, what do we say? What do they say?
Right. It's really tough. It is extremely difficult. Parents, just know that your children are watching you. They're modeling. They want you to model it, the way they need to respond. So it's so important that yeah, we can make it a very simple conversation. Someone was killed and in the United States. And this sometimes happens with individuals with that particular skin tone. And this happened, they were killed by the hands of a police officer. And police officers have a long experience in the United States with this kind of hurt and pain, but not only in the United States, but in Canada as well too, with our Black and Indigenous communities, and that this is something that we can talk about. If you have more questions, allow them to ask questions. Don't be afraid to bring up this conversation. Oftentimes there's fear around having these conversations. It's here now, and it's important that we offer the support, the modeling, the calmness, the respect in our household. These are the things that we do. These are our values. This is the way we respect people. So we always want to allow the parents to be taking the lead, reflecting love, and know that in our communities, we're constantly being watched. And so be mindful of how you are interacting with people in your community, and know that that's how kids are going to learn how to support and love on one another. They're the future.
Can I ask what you might say? I have one more question from Sarah, but just quickly on this point, there's so much coverage. Obviously, the protests are around the world, but we keep seeing the video over and over again because it's important to look at, central to the story. What do you suggest in terms of how much television to allow kids to watch?
To an extent, right? And so the idea is, again, we go back to age and stage. Young people can process, but even still, these images. But so it's important with teens that we're having these conversations following. With our young people, with our children, there's no need for them. There's no need for them to be seeing these images. They might see those images, and we may have to now respond. But it's important, yes, that we are not exposing our young people to these types of images, and that we're providing them with words, and we're then offering them safety, and letting them know that we are there for them. So again, modeling that through hugs, warmth, and letting them know that this is not what we agree with. And children understand fairness, right? They understand that when we explain that people are upset and angry because of the fear that they're experiencing. So remember to repeat those things and offer some space, giving them the opportunity to have fun and resources that might be helpful so that they can be successful. So we're always giving them warmth. We're always giving them opportunities to ask questions and correcting them as well as needed.
From one of our viewers, Violet, who says she's been watching our conversations through the morning and says that she thinks we've been placing, or the questions so far have been placing, too much responsibility on Black people who are already experiencing the racism. What about the responsibility and the burden that white parents should carry to speak to their kids to prevent racism? Thank you, Violet, for that.
Great question, and an important one. When we think about the history, whether it's in this country or in even the United States, it's important that we keep this in mind. Yes, we need, as white parents, they need to take up a large portion and that of responsibility here. And that's what the real shift that we're seeing is happening. It's that we are tired. Black people are tired. They are overwhelmed, and they no longer are going to accept life as usual. And that means recognizing that just as much as we are, uncomfortable bringing up racism, we've had to. And so it's your turn. It's your turn to really to acknowledge that you have a role to play. You have to be able to have these difficult conversations, hold the space, hold how you're feeling and what we might be feeling as well. Listen, ask questions, be open and accept that maybe you don't know all the answers, and that's okay too. But we no longer want to say we don't see color. That's harmful, and it continues to be harmful. And so yes, there's now your responsibility to do the research, to be the anti-racist parent, to raise anti-racist parents for the children for the future, that will be able to walk alongside all colors, all nationalities, and say, yes, we are the same. There are differences, but we are the same. We are human beings. And so I agree. This is now a different type of conversation. And we are no longer going to say it's okay to say you don't know, or I don't think I agree with you, in fact, that there is racism. We're not asking you if you agree. We're telling you that this is how we're feeling. And for far too long, we've allowed that to be okay.
The other questions we have are variations on this, and they're all very good. Sarah writing to say, number one, thank you for the focus. So again, a lot of appreciation for your joining us, Carole. But Sarah's point is, what support can we give to students living at home with family who expressed racist ideas that challenge teens' own anti-racist beliefs?
First of all, I want to say to that, thank you, that this is hard. This is a difficult balance in terms of holding on to the fact that you know that what they're saying or sharing is inappropriate. So the stressors that person must be going through is very difficult. And recognizing that you may have to put some boundaries around that person. So you may have to let them know that this is something that you're not going to participate in. Know that people are behind you. You have supports. Don't feel like you have to do all of this alone. So connect with people that can support you and recognize that this conversation is going to be ongoing. So be aware of how you want to respond to these questions. Be open to how you do feel when you're around this person, and be open to how you want to bring up different ways that they may need to see the situation.
David writes, David has a 13-year-old, and he wonders how would he go about getting his 13-year-old interested and engaged in talking about racism. He's starting his first year in high school in a diverse area, and David, the dad, would like to educate him as best I can. So how start the conversation and where to look for some of that research and supports?
So I think the conversation will come up naturally, and I think it's important that parents, again, are not shying away from those conversations. But I think it's important that, yes, we allow our children to recognize that there's going to be differences, and that's okay. So again, normalizing that this is part of life, and recognizing that they can have various relationships with different types of people. And so be open, ask questions, be okay to get things wrong. It's okay to get things wrong sometimes. And, they don't have to get it perfect, but they do have to be open and responding in a way, this is what I've done in the past. This is what's helped me. So be that type of parent that is not afraid to make mistakes and offer suggestions along the way. And I think that will be a wonderful opening to that conversation.
And maybe just one last point to answer our last question from N. Markham, and thank you for it. And it's again similar, but I think it's important to air all of these because everybody has different types of questions. But this George Floyd tragedy has really provided a moment to reflect on all of these things. But this question is, what can white parents can do or should not do to demonstrate support when they obviously cannot share the same experience of racism?
I think that's okay, but they're not supposed to be able to have the same experience, but be mindful of the ways in which, for example, if you're watching news, if you're watching these telecasts and you're hearing something, be careful of how you respond, how you box people, how you might, explain what might be happening. Pain hurts. And people respond difficulty when there's pain. And the healing process is going to take a long time. So be mindful that you don't put labels, you don't put people down, and you're not negatively reflecting them. And I think that it will be the beginning, the start of just offering a safe space. Then people will be able to open up and share more.